Are you taking the operation side of camp seriously enough? If I had to guess, I would say probably not. Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker Podcast brought to you by Ultra Camp, Bolin, and the UltimateCampResource.com. I'm Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp consultant specializing in solving the problem that I most often hear from camp directors: parents just don't read.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson. Once upon a time, I started a camp called Camp Highlight. It's the best camp in the world. Look it up. Now I spend my time being a camp consultant, making sure that every camp space is available to every staff member, child, and family, regardless of how they identify.
Hey everyone, my name is Rachel. My pronouns are she, they, and on this season of life, I'm working as a camp consultant, helping camp directors see what's on their plate and lighten that load a little bit as we head into the summer.
And I'm Peter Elbaum. I'm operations director at Camp Greystone in North Carolina. And I also write a newsletter called The Tool Belt, which is all about using technology to streamline your camp operations.
Welcome back, Rachel. We're grateful to have you. You're going to be with us on the next episode too, so everybody gets to dial up the Rachel content and Camp Hacker this month. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Travis. I'm excited about it.
Nice. And Peter, thank you for being here for the first time. This topic is a suggestion from you, and I'm super grateful that you did it because it tends to be stuff that goes a bit undiscussed in the camp world. But I want to ask you about your camp experience. How did you get started at camp?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all. My camp story is a little bit convoluted, roundabout, maybe not typical. So I didn't grow up going to camp. I didn't have many experiences at camp. Did work and attend a few Young Life camps in the States here. In high school and in college, I worked in the summers, but tended to not do kind of traditional summer camping until I met my wife, and she is the fifth generation of her family to be involved in a camp that they've run since 1920. And so after we started dating, I graduated college, and that summer I worked at Greystone, where I am now. That's the camp, and had a great time, and then worked two more summers after that as travel director, but then kind of felt a little bit the pressure to get a normal job. Didn't really have a career plan in mind. I was just working at camp seasonally at that point. And so I went to a coding boot camp and became a software engineer and worked in the tech industry for 7 years. And then about a year and a half ago, had the opportunity to come back to camp as operations director, my current role. And so I come to camp very much with the perspective of a technologist and trying to apply technology to make things more effective and run smoother and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I thank you for telling us that story. I love it when camp nerds get pulled away and then they come back like, actually, I have something really important to offer because it's not in the traditional box of who we consider or first think of, I think, when we talk about camp people. So today we're going to talk about operations, and we probably should define it. So for me, in all of the little boxes that run camp, there's a staff box, a camp box, camper box, a program box that sort of lays over top of both of those, and then operations. There's obviously more boxes than that, but operations to me is all the stuff that makes camp work in all the background stuff that makes camp work: food, travel, physical plant, all of those different things. And we want to do a bit of a dive on this. We have in the spring a couple of times done episodes on operations just to get people thinking about some other parts of camp. But that's where we're going to start today, is talking about operations. We're definitely going to lean into Peter's experience using tech tools, which aligns obviously with a lot of my interests as well. But operations, what do you think non techie people, camp people, need to be thinking about when it comes to operations, Peter?
Yeah, so I think so much of it is about considering the friction in things. So I think very much in terms of systems. So I find that at camp, a lot of the ways that we do things have evolved organically over time. And because of that, they may not be as efficient as they could be, as effective as they could be. And so I find that having your operations be successful and really support the functioning of camp, it starts with taking a look at how are we currently doing things? What are the pain points in how we're doing things? Could it be smoother in some way? Could there be less friction in some way? Whether that's back office or, like you said, food service or maintenance, and just trying to figure out, can we do things better in a very general sense?
That's great. And that really aligns with something that I think about a lot, which is how do we make camp more efficient in general? And I think looking at the operational wastes and inefficiencies are a great way to do that, as a lot of us, I think rightfully so, consider operations to be the support background to kids having a great experience at camp. And I don't want to shortcut that part of it, but I think that there's tons of opportunity in operations. Like a lot of things in camp, operations tends to be, because labor's always been cheap for us, operations is one of those things that we just tend to muscle through without considering, could we maybe do this a little bit better? Rachel, you're in charge of a great big site north of Toronto for a good period of time. What was your thinking on operations and how to manage it?
Yeah, a couple things. The first is like look for your bottlenecks. Like look for the things that at every point in this, you're like, oh my goodness, I hate this process. Is it dealing with your garbage? Is it dealing with like where you store your food? And like deal with that now. Because it might seem like a little thing, like, yeah, I'm the director, I shouldn't be talking about garbage in April. But in fact, you should, because it really sucks to do it in the heat of August, when you could have found a better system a few months earlier. And I think also like find your experts and line them up before the season starts. There's
Yeah,
nothing worse than looking for an exterminator to deal with the raccoons you have living in your cabins when they're actively living there. It's much easier when you've got them in your phone book earlier.
right, right. Awesome. Chris, I appreciate that your perspective is as a renter of facilities. What, from that perspective of a camp that didn't necessarily control the physical plant, what was, well, what was the frustration for you? Or what was a point that you think should be better considered?
For us personally, food
Yeah, for
service.
highlight. Yeah.
Food service. We had no say in the food service. And well, I was camp director there for 14 years. And oh God, I don't know who listens to this, but out of those 14 years, 0 years was good food. And we complained about it every single year. And they switched providers like maybe 3 or 4 times, not necessarily because of our complaints, because of issues that they were having, which were
Mm,
clear. Um, and that remains. I mean, we've since switched campsites, so hopefully the new campsite will be better. But that has been our singular frustration. Um, can I just add something real quick?
go,
Because I
please.
was like, when you all were talking, I was like dying. The thing about operations is that if you are a perfectionist, this is your quicksand,
Yeah.
right? And I am a perfectionist, and the words efficiency not only get me out of bed in the morning, but throw my clothes on and I'm out the door. I love to increase in efficiency way past the point when, I'm no longer polishing, but I'm wearing away. And so in this discussion, I just want to acknowledge that people out there, I see you and I understand. And part of being efficient is understanding when to sort of sit back and realize that, you know, there's a whole forest here, not just this tree.
Well,
Well,
and
Chris, I appreciate that your perspective is having now seen a bunch of other camps. What's an inefficiency that's you think is obvious that you're surprised people aren't picking up on, or camps aren't picking up on?
Wow, that is a gotcha question. Outside of staff issues, because that's always it. Outside
Yeah,
of
yeah.
staff
No,
issues,
I mean, just people bring you in to talk about staff, but you have such a huge experience of camp. You see lots of different things that aren't kind of on your agenda.
I don't know if this is fair though. It's
Okay.
facilities issues.
Yeah. Like,
It's facility issues. I mean, for some it's the dining hall. Um, seriously, bathrooms and cabins.
yeah.
But I don't know if that's fair to say because people are running through their money, doing their projects, and everyone's getting around to the bathrooms and the cabins, and I get it. But in some ways, I don't want to spill too much tea or go into people's business, but in some ways, not paying attention to those things increases inefficiency. It's hard to
Yeah.
get kids rallied. It's harder across every single aspect, from staff issues to program, when those things aren't updated. But I'm going to say again, I feel really terrible saying that because that's sometimes out of people's control. Just, I get that. But if you
Yeah.
asked and I answered.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Rachel, I saw you had a thought.
Yeah, I think sometimes with operations, like people are like, but it's not why I got into camp. Like, it's not what I love. It's not my passion
Yeah.
project. But if you get
Yeah.
really efficient at that and put some really good systems in place, it gives you more time for what you love. So like figure out
Thank
your
you.
garbage and your dishes and your traffic flow now. So when kids arrive, that's what you get to do. And you're not worried about what you're going to do with all those things.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. I think that's kind of how I always try to frame it to directors is let's spend time on the things that really matter, which is the people at camp and not stuff that either you could have automated away or made more efficient or delegated to somebody.
Yeah, I really like that framing. I think that, I mean, I, I think it's a challenge for people to get to that point because camp people tend to be so obsessed with kids and program and staff. And but again, we tend to have this tradition of just working people inefficiently, but just making people we'll just throw more people at a problem instead of trying to figure out how to solve the problem. And yeah, that's good. And bottlenecks, Rachel's a good term. And I think of that as just dining hall things come to mind for me, like getting a couple hundred kids into a dining hall through one tiny door when the food has already been ready for 7 minutes, and or like salad bars and dining halls are just a place that drives my wife Beth insane. She's like, why don't we have 2 lines on this? I don't know, Beth. Anyway, but yeah, those little bottlenecks, those places that are not providing good service for the kids, not making the community, not serving the community. Yeah, great.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the dining hall, it's everything that you said, from the lineups to the how the food's distributed to the salad bar. This could just be an entire episode about dining hall operations.
Totally.
And how you clear the dishes. I'm very passionate
Yes.
about that, apparently.
Rachel, in 14 years, you would not, could you guess how many different systems we devised to correct for the inefficiencies of the dining hall itself? Like, it's in the teens, and I've only been there 14 years. So let that guide you. It's a lot. But again, I want to say it feels unfair because dining halls are an extremely expensive thing to sort of like reconfigure, and I get it. It doesn't make it any less true, though, that is often the choke point.
But I think it's also often the reason why people don't address operational issues, because they're like, well, it's like, I can't change the physical structure of this building, and so therefore I can't address it at all. But like things in a dining hall, there are plenty of small steps you could take that would make the experience far better. And that applies to most operational things. Like, so even if you don't have the capital to be building new buildings, you could be taking these small steps. But we just see operations that we're like, no, can't touch it. It's been like that forever.
Can I put you on the spot? What are those small steps?
Yeah, good question. I think in the dining hall, are there things like, are there dish bins that we can put into place instead of every child going up? Are there like temporary tables that we can bring in? Like, we can't reconfigure the dish window, but we can do things like that. Or is there like, do we stagger our meals instead of like trying to get everybody in at the same door? Like, do we do buffet where everyone comes in instead of all eating at the same time? Like, a little bit more creative twists on things instead of just saying, well, we can't change the structure of the dining hall.
That stuff becomes a mentality thing. The framework I've often talked about that I think about a lot is based on the Toyota manufacturing way and the idea of making things lean, so reducing waste in all sorts of ways. And something I've worked with a couple camps on, and I never understand why it doesn't stick. it's probably on me, but just getting the mentality that if you can make things 2 seconds better, but you multiply that by 50 or 60 people on staff, everybody makes things 2 seconds better every day. It's such a small change, and it's small to get started on those things. But if you develop the mentality, like everybody's empowered, everybody's expected to make things just 2 seconds better. Like that for me was, um, back to dining hall doors, bringing in 160 people through a double dining hall door. But the kids that had prepped the dining hall and set the tables and things were greeting every single person with a started with a high five, and then the health inspector said no way. So it was like a high elbow on the way, and you're like, stop slowing down the traffic. We need to get these people eating. I think it's so disrespectful to kitchens when we ask them to prepare meals on time, and then we spend 17 minutes before the meal farting around with stuff. There you go. So there's the groundwork. Peter, I'm really interested in going to camp, going away, developing a bit of a different worldview, and coming back to camp. What were the things that most, were the things you wanted to change when you got back to camp? They're here's my starting points.
Sure. So it started a little bit before that because the whole time I was gone, my wife, Catherine, was still at camp. And
Right.
so I was able to just observe how she was working. And part of being a software engineer, I think for most people, is that you begin to develop a very low tolerance for repetitive tasks because the whole advantage of code is that it does repetitive things a lot better than we do, a lot faster. And so I began to notice over time that she was spending a lot of time doing things that were, number one, not using her skills, and number two, very repetitive. And so,
Yeah.
in thinking about directors' kind of day-to-day tasks, I began to get really sensitive to that kind of thing even before I came back and just observing her. And so, began to think about ways that I could use my tech skills to automate away those kind of things that were not allowing us to use our time to the best of our ability. And like I said, on the things that really matter, which is ultimately people and the thing that, the parts of camp that really impact people, which is not like, doing back office stuff a lot of the time.
Yeah. Do you have some sort of framework or something that sets off an alarm for you, Peter? That's like, this is something we could automate, or this is something we could look for better systems?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like I was saying, like rote and repetitive are the main
Right.
things I
Okay.
look for. So rote, like anyone could do it. Not using your skills as a director, there are certain things as a director that only you can do or only you should do. And then repetitive, doing the same thing over and over. So I can give you a quick example. The first thing that I ever built for my wife was that something to help her do this job that she had to do every few weeks, which is we have a wait list. And so we have our wait list in CampMinder. They give us a CSV, but we wanted it to be on our website. That's HTML. And so she was spending several hours every other week, basically going line by line down a spreadsheet and kind of updating the same chunks of HTML with camper name,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
last name, date they got on the wait list, their grade. And so when I
Yeah.
saw that, that's an alarm bell moment for me where I was like, we cannot be spending time on this, And so something that was taking her 2-3 hours every other week, I wrote code for in a couple hours, and it's been 3-4 years since then. She's still using it, and so
Yeah.
that to me is really low hanging fruit that can really help us as directors just be a lot more effective.
Yeah. Rachel or Chris, either one of you, opportunities for that rote and repetitive that we could consider streamlining?
I think making sure that it's assigned to somebody and that person is accountable. I've been talking to a lot of directors who are struggling with the young staff. They're like, well, everybody knows that they're supposed to do this thing, whether it's like wipe down the tables or empty the garbages on the cabin line, like whatever it might be. Make sure somebody's like at the start of the season, make a schedule, assign somebody, hold them accountable in those first 2 weeks. So like they haven't done the task, go take them to do it, make sure it's done, and that'll be done for the rest of the season. And you won't be the one who's wiping the tables and emptying the garbages. So like it's a small thing, but I think like again, once you get those tasks off your plate to somebody else, then you can focus on bigger things.
That's what I was going to say, and I would add, um, check in about these repetitive tasks. I think there's part of a larger point that I want to make is that um, there's two ways to be efficient. Like you can be coldly efficient and you can be empathically efficient. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I tend to be more coldly efficient, and that doesn't always work. Sometimes I'm like, well, let's just switch this whole thing up and do it differently because this isn't working, without really taking the time to understand that someone else came up with that system on staff, and me just dismissing it like out of hand is going to cause some friction somewhere else. So yeah, make sure people are assigned to, if not coming up with whatever the repetitive task is without, you are in charge of coming up with the solution. And I will check in with you about how that's going at some later point before I make a decision about whether it's working for the camp as a whole, which is my job as director, right? I bring this because I've made this mistake too many times. I've just shown up on the scene, be like, this isn't working, change the whole thing, let's do it this way. And
Mm-hmm.
the hurt feelings and the charred relationships that stem from that, it wasn't worth it. I could have tempered my tone.
I think that's a
That's
great
great.
point and kind of relates to what you were saying about, there's a limit to efficiency and you can, polish or, and then start to take away. So I think sometimes it's worth also factoring the human and relationship aspect into that.
Yeah, and on that, like efficiency is going to look different to every person because we all also have our own, passion points about camp and things that we
Mm-hmm.
love. And so it might be inefficient or seem inefficient if I'm the person who's calling all of our first time campers. But if that's the thing that I love and like fuels me for the summer, then I can find other efficiencies that allow me to do that. And that's okay. And you should give yourself permission to do the things that you love to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to lean in the middle on this because I definitely think you should be great at communicating this stuff. We should be super intentional and kind of compassionate about these kind of conversations. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have these conversations. Like, can't people tend to default to, well, maybe I can't come up with the most incredibly perfect kind of compassionate way to have this discussion, so therefore I won't start this discussion. There are a lot of avoided conversations in camp management because we're nice. And I find that really frustrating. Like, I enjoy cutting the grass. It's nice to have a project that has a start and a beginning and I can see straight lines in the middle of it. That never happens in my job, but it's not the best use of my time. It's not the best use of camp's investment in me for me to be cutting grass. But I like your point, Rachel, about making phone calls because that's personal, that's big picture. You develop a relationship with families, you help kids fit in better. Like, that's a kindness to me, even if it may not be the most efficient.
Yeah, you have to find that balance, I think, because I also think that there's sometimes operational things that a director can do that show the staff that you're willing to do those tasks.
Indeed.
But you have to find that balance. Yeah, like mowing the grass on a large site that takes you 3 hours is not a good use of time. But if you are helping wipe the dining hall tables, it's not really probably the best use of your time. But if it shows staff that you're willing to sort of get down and dirty alongside them and do those tasks, maybe that's really efficient for the culture you need.
Mhm. Yeah, I was on a dishwashing team. Both Beth and I were on dishwashing teams until we left. It was my job every summer to clean the sewage filters because I didn't want anybody else to have to do that job, and I didn't want people to think that. I don't want people to see that I would take on terrible jobs as well. I get that. I want to turn us into a bit more of the tech side of this, how we manage it. Um, I think so. Imagining that we've seen a problem and it's repetitive, and what was the other word, Peter?
Yeah, I'd say like rote or boring. It's like not
Yeah,
using your
sure.
skills. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You see that, and then how do we start to look at solutions for that? And that's why we wanted to have you to talk about this, Peter, because it's something that thinking is something that you have really been intentional about. Before we talk about specific solutions, how do you even get to a specific solution? You've identified a problem. How do you get to the solution?
Sure. So I think just at a very high level, after you've identified something that you want to tackle, maybe automate or make more efficient in some way, it helps to know what the options are. And I think this is potentially where I might have an advantage that not every camp director does, just because it's helpful to know kind of what's out there and what you could
Yeah.
possibly pick from. And so there's everything from off the shelf tools. I'm thinking like a Zapier, for example, that, it's a no code tool. It'll help you connect apps together, tons of automations you can make that way, all the way up to writing custom software, which I have the luxury of being able to do given my background. Understand not everyone does, but I think with the advent of all of these new AI tools, it's becoming more and more possible, even for camp directors or anyone else, to be able to have custom software that meets their needs. So, yeah, I think definitely after you've identified the problem, it's just thinking about what are some ways we could solve this, and it helps to know kind of what's out there in order to do that.
Yeah, I've been blown away, and I am really into tech and tools, but I'm not a programmer in any way, and so that's always where I start to bump into problems. But it's been fascinating for me to start to open my brain to what AI can do in this situation, and when the AI started to show their thinking, and how they solve problems, it really blew my mind. Like I fed one of them, I don't even remember, a spreadsheet, and I needed to separate out some tags that were all in one column, and I need them in individual columns. And I was like, probably you can do this faster than I can cut and paste this job. I watched the app write itself. I watched the LLM, the AI, write itself an app to do this job, and then throw the app away when it was done. It's like, if we can get to that, like that kind of stuff, it doesn't have to be a major commitment. It's like, we need to solve a little problem. Let's get something that can help us solve this little problem, and we'll just keep digging on little problems. Peter, you said one thing that I just want to make sure we define a couple things. We don't get too far away from them. Zapier is?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me that everyone might not have the context there. So Zapier is a tool, web app, zapier.com, that helps you connect different apps so that they can communicate. And that's done through what's called an API, which is application programming interface. And that's just code that allows you to access data that's in a particular app. And so Zapier allows you to connect them together into multiple steps, use conditional logic like if else. So for example, just a very a basic automation that we use is every time someone applies to camp, we want to know. And so we use Slack. And so every time someone applies via our ATS, we get a notification in a Slack channel that's dedicated to hiring. So just stuff like that, that kind of otherwise you have to be paying a lot of attention to. And there's tons of other examples as well, but that's just a kind of an intro way that you could get started with it if you wanted to.
Yeah. It just ties two pieces of software that don't talk to each other together in a way.
Right.
Like, if you're running marketing messages to families that are interested in camp that haven't signed up yet, and you're running that in something like MailChimp, you need to know when they actually go to CampMinder and register, because you need them not to keep getting the email that says you really should sign your kid up for camp. Because the moment that they sign up for camp and then they get that next message, the next salesy message, they get panicky and we look sloppy. And camp should never look sloppy in front of parents. And they're always like, did you not get it? Like, you charged my credit card. What? And you're like, no, it's just that, they don't care. They don't care that CampMinder doesn't talk to the other thing. But it's, we have to be thoughtful about those things to not look sloppy.
That's a great example.
This is one way where AI is going to change the game completely. Between all the different, like between the camp management system and the MailChimps and the financial software and all the other stuff that we're using, at some point in the near future, and I'm talking like before 2030, someone's just going to come up with a way that an AI can analyze and access all those systems and pull the data together. I can't wait for that. I cannot wait for that to happen, because I have to tell you what you said, Travis, about looking sloppy in front of parents. Between our camp management system, which tells us when someone's registering, then we have to go on Slack and tell the staff that someone had registered. Then we have to go back and do the financial aspect, make sure we charge their credit card, make sure that receipt gets to the parent, and all of that is not automated, which is something that a machine could do if it had access to all the information. And for a variety of, I'm sure, copyright reasons, like these companies and these systems aren't going to make themselves available to talk to each other natively. But I'm really looking forward to the day 2-3 years from now when all this can be summed up. You don't think so? You don't think 2 or 3 years?
Not 2 or 3 years. I'm telling you, by November.
Damn, Travis.
U.S. Thanksgiving, that stuff's going to be possible.
Do you want to put money on it? Do you want to make this interesting?
Well, yes, we'll define that bet, but yes. Yeah.
I know.
It's just changing
don't.
so fast, and we're now at that point where it's starting to be much more of it's possible. Those things are like, man, if I could just. What are some other areas that people can be looking at, Peter, and be thinking to connect, or that the tech's out there that people may not really understand how it could help us?
Sure. So there's a few different directions you could go. A little bit less on the cutting edge, I think, is figuring out ways to extend the software you already use. So this might be a little bit controversial, but the reality is that sometimes there's features that you would like to be in your camp management system that aren't. And so something I've done in some very small ways is to write Chrome extensions for myself to be able to add functionality to our camp management system that wasn't there before. So one quick example with that is that our nurses come from a lot of times like ICU settings where they're very used to having allergies like completely in a way that can't be missed in the electronic medical record. But our camp management system didn't have it in a way that was very obvious. And so they were asking like, hey, can you put a ticket in? And it ended up just taking a really long time to for that to be addressed. And so I kind of took the bull by the horns, which I can as a software engineer, and wrote a Chrome extension that highlights allergies that campers have to drugs for us. So things like that, I think it's back to the point of just knowing what's possible. I think it's important to know that you can extend the software you're using, and it's a lot easier to do if it's in a web browser.
Well, and this is a perfect example to highlight this kind of thinking, this kind of systems view on things. It helps your people. Like smaller camps that have 1 week sessions, medical staff are often volunteers that come for 1 week. They're not necessarily paid, month or 2 month staff, but either way, part of my recruitment of come to camp and work for us is, hey, you get to spend time at the beach with your kids. And if you're farting around doing medicine management, then I've promised them a thing that they can't get to. And so that's just a people thing. Like, how can I get you out of the health center more often, allow you to spend more time doing cool things at camp?
Yeah, and hopefully less stressful as well. Like when it comes to things like
Yeah.
medication, it's not the
Right.
area where you want to make a mistake. So improve the experience all around, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I wonder if there's other parts of this folks want to explore before we move on. There's lots of things we could talk about. Is there something that's coming up?
I think I'm not the most techie person, I'll say. So, Peter, I love all of the things that you're saying. And I think that there are also lots of either newer directors or just directors that aren't technologically inclined that aren't even using functions of like Microsoft Office that would make their lives infinitely easier. Like, let's set up some email
Keyboard
rules.
shortcuts.
Yeah, keyboard shortcuts, email rules, so that like all the emails about lost and found go to one folder, like stuff like that. So like ask your frontline administrators what's taking up all their time, and there might be a really quick change that could save you hours, and then dive into like the stuff that you're saying, Peter, which sounds incredible. But like, let's also use the basic functions as efficiently as possible.
Definitely. I'm all for that. I think if there's built-in keyboard shortcuts to whatever you're using, go for that. There's no need to over-engineer things. And yeah, I think talking to the frontline folks is great. I think I have a very low tolerance for repetitive things, like I said, but even just asking people like, what do you hate doing? What's taking up all your time? What are the paper cuts in your day-to-day? Those kind of conversations are going to surface things that you can work on and that are going to be helpful to people.
Just on the other side of Rachel, I am the most techie person on my staff, which has its own frustrations because, okay, I'm the most techie person on my staff, and I'm a perfectionist who will not sleep until something is perfected, which means I don't get a lot of sleep in general. And yeah, you know what? I'm just going to say this boldly and in public. Every part of Camp Highlight could be improved, and I know how to do it. However, the uphill battle of dealing with the other director and then dealing with our assistant directors, training them on this, getting them to shift their mentality. And also, like I alluded to before, like understanding how some tasks are syntonic. Syntonic meaning it holds the ego together. So some tasks people really identify with, like, oh, I am this position because I, physically take this piece of paper, stamp this, staple it, put it in this pile. Like, this is my value at camp. And so there are so many ways that operations can be improved. However, I have to move like really slowly and finely, which is frustrating because, like I mentioned before, I'm a perfectionist and I can do this. If I was going to remake this camp today completely on my own with me doing all the parts, yeah, I could do it. Like, it would be so great. The issue is like, it's not just a mathematical equation. There's a human equation in it. And as my advice to someone looking to improve operations is really to start on the human side, right? Because that's going to define your limits about what is possible, at least in the time frame, at least in this short time frame, like before next summer or even the summer after.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you have to prioritize that. And like I've been working with some directors and it's like, okay, like pick your couple things that like have to change this summer, either because they're going to have the largest impact on your camper results or it's been identified that it's a pain point for you. Like pick those 3 things and maybe rank them, like the one thing that's going to require a lot of change management and then 2 things that are just really simple to do, like that low hanging fruit, and get those out of the way. Set yourself, 2 or 3 stretch goals that like it'd be really nice if we could make some forward momentum on these before the summer. And then also like let's shelve things for next year, but actually keep them written somewhere so we can address them next year. Because we are always like, oh, in the future, but like you have to hold yourself accountable that actually next November you're going to discuss a better garbage removal system at camp.
Peter, I'm curious, with the tech solutions that you've implemented, how do you get past how uncomfortable a lot of camp people are with technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a few different ways you could do it. I think just from the conversational perspective, I thought Chris made a great point. Sometimes people are tied to a task in one way or another, or might take the suggestion that we could do it better as you saying that you don't think they're doing it well. So I think starting with the relational aspect is necessary and essential. Assuming that you've come to an agreement that this task is either unnecessary or could be more efficient, hopefully it's a pain point for a person, so they want you to help them with it. At that point, I think if you're automating it in some way, then you're kind of taking the person out of the equation to a certain extent, or at least hopefully my hope is always to make it a lot easier. So instead of them having to do something repetitively 100 times in a row, maybe it's just click a button. And so I think my hope is to make things accessible even for people who aren't super inclined to use technology.
That's great. That's the pin we're going to put in this discussion. So
Great.
Thank you to the 3 of you for a thoughtful way of dealing with this. That means we are on to our tool of the week. I'm going to start us off this time. My tool is super basic, but it's one of those things that it's a tech thing that people push back on that I don't understand why they push back on it. But my tool of the week is a simple Brother laser printer that prints black and white, because 97% of print jobs can be done in black and white. You never have to change the toner. I've owned the same Brother printer for 15 years now, changed the toner twice. And everybody's like, yeah, I think I'll get an inkjet. It's like, okay, you could like the 4 color print jobs you have to do a year, you could outsource, and the ink's going to cost you $7 zillion in over that period of time. So as usual, if you go to camphacker.tv/podcast, you can find our tools of the week and links to things. We are changing our link policies. We're going to do a lot of the Amazon stuff, so we'll link to the Brother websites and find other places to buy stuff. But get yourself something like a Brother laser printer. They're pretty bomb proof and they're so much less expensive than ink. Rachel, what's your tool?
Mine is the James Clear newsletter. So I've been enjoying it. I feel like it forces me to think and do some self-reflection. I opened it up just before this, and the question this week is, what hard lessons keep repeating itself in your life because you refuse to learn it? And I feel like every camp director could do some thinking on that.
Yeah, that's great. James Clear is the Atomic Habits guy. He wrote the book Atomic Habits. So this is follow-up newsletter. That's great. Peter.
Sure. So, in keeping with the conversation we've had, I'm recommending Pinpoint, which is an applicant tracking system, pinpointhq.com. We moved to this tool a couple years ago. It replaced a system for us that had evolved organically over time that had a lot of paper cuts. So now we use it for all of our staff applications for the summer, as well as any year-round roles that we're hiring for. And it's completely transformed the way that we do hiring and made everyone's lives a lot better.
That's perfect. Thank you, Peter. Chris?
I want to point out that I also recommended Brother Laser printers a while back. So Travis is just like copying me. I think it's fairly inefficient. Anyway, what is my suggestion? I stumbled across this website, which I think is super cool. So one thing, in our staff training, what we often do, because we want the staff to experience the growth that they have between year to year, we have them write a letter to themselves, and then we give it to them the next staff training. And all year, it's a like, oh my God, who has the letters? Do you have the letters? Did you bring the letters? Oh my God, where are the letters? Do you have it's Christmas. Does anyone know where the letters are? Because we're gonna need them in 6 months. And talking about using technology to make things a little easier. Check out futureme.org. Futureme.org is a website, does one thing, right? You just type something into it. You tell it when you want it delivered back to you. It could be like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, and it will send you an email with what you wrote back to you. No mess, no muss, no fuss, no paperwork, no wondering where the letters are on Easter Day. So being that it's this simple, you should absolutely incorporate it into your staff training because it's literally not a heavy lift. Futureme.org.
Amazing. Chris, while you were talking, I went back to the document and searched, and we're going to give Joe Richards the credit on this one.
Yeah.
2011 was the
I
first
saw
time
that.
Joe said Brother Laser Printer.
You know,
So-
can Brother be a sponsor? This is the third time we've recommended their products on this podcast.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Well, thank you all for being here. Chris, how can people get in touch if they have any follow-up questions?
Smoke signals mostly. If that doesn't work for you, yeah, you can email me, chris@planetchris.net. If you want to see this stuff that I post on Instagram, follow me at planetchris1.
Perfect. And Rachel?
Yeah, folks can always find me at LinkedIn at Rachel Kent, or send me an email at rachelk997@gmail.com.
It's good to have you back, Rachel. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Travis.
Peter, how can people get in touch?
Sure. My email is peter@campgreystone.com, Greystone with an E. And my newsletter's at campoperations.com.
Perfect. Yes, everybody should check out Peter's email. I've been reading it on the website. I don't think I subscribed, so that's not an indication. I have read it, Peter, I promise. Peter, we're so grateful to have you. And once again, I'll say to people listening or watching on YouTube, put up your hand, you get on the show. All I want, Chris and I need to find topics that people are passionate about, and we love to have folks join us on the conversation. If you want to just be a host sometime, just let me know. We keep a list of people like Rachel that we can reach out to and say, hey, would you join us? We need some more bodies. And yeah, so I'm grateful for that, Peter, and I hope that everybody checks out Peter Elbaum's newsletter. And my final message for today is, it is spring. Listen to First Class Counselors. This is the podcast that's created for camp directors to pass on to their staff. So listen to a few, find the ones you want to pass on to your staff this spring, and you will be happy with what they've done, and it's really thoughtful the way that they've put that in there. So I hope you check out First Class Counselors on your podcast app. Thanks for the evening, friends.